Right. Anybody want to chat about anything that's going on in their lives? Easter's just broken a toe. Yeah. I've had quite an interesting day actually, because I've been drifting through different ideas and notions. And just before this meeting, the whole notion of identity started. I started thinking about it, and who am I, and what am I doing here, and who are all these people. And part of the identity is how we make choices. So I just made a post about that, and I guess that's what's on my mind at the moment. So if you would like me to talk about this further, we can go through this. Maybe just explore it together, because how do we make choices? And why do we make choices? Yeah. And are our... Sorry, I've just got someone who's in need. And how do we make these choices? And then I began to realize that our choices are influenced by our biases, by our bias. How biased am I in one area or another? And then I began to explore this, and I began to see, well, why do I choose vegetables over fish, or vegetables over meat? Why do I choose? And once I've done that, once I identify myself as a vegan, is that not a bias? And don't my biases influence my choices? So if I become thoroughly biased in a certain way, do I even have free will? That's a crazy kind of notion, I guess, for most people, but that's how my brain kind of thinks. And of course, I would like to be able to think or feel that I'm authentically who I am, free from bias. And we live in a thoroughly biased world, a reality system here that fills us with a lot of biases that we aren't even aware of, you know. And it works on many different levels. It's on the level of language, for instance. How biased am I towards speaking English and English-speaking people? How biased am I to white people, and how, what white people do? How biased am I against people of other color? How biased am I in my cultural choices? I might go into an African hut, and this has happened to me, where I went to an African hut and the people were barefoot and scantily clothed, and I sat down with them, and they began to eat their food out of a pot, a central pot in the hut, and you could reach into the pot and take out some what we call mealie meal, but I don't know what you would call it in other parts of the world. But it's basically just mealie or corn flour cooked in that's boiled, and then you dip your hand into the pot and you eat the pot, and everyone dips their hand into the pot. And at the time, because I was quite young then, I thought, this is awful. People just all helping themselves from the same pot, and eat sticking it into their mouth, and then they put their hand back into the pot and they eat. And they weren't particularly hygienic about the way they did that. And because they didn't wipe their hands each time they dipped into the pot, they just ate and they talked. And they ate and they talked. And there didn't seem to be any kind of consideration for hygiene. So at that time in my life, I was appalled, and my bias kicked in, and so why are they doing this? This is unhygienic. It should not be this way. So all my prejudices and biases kicked in, and that colored the experience of being with those people. So my biases kind of put me in a prison of bias, so that I couldn't just allow myself to be with those people. And then when I looked at the way they were dressed and the way they spoke and the way their hand movements went and the whole rhythm of the way they did things, and it was thoroughly foreign to me. And I found this very deeply disturbing at the time, because at that time I didn't see myself as being biased. I saw myself as being right. I was right and they were wrong. And that kind of notion then seemed to be the right way to go. So I was taking my bias along, and I was creating this narrative for me and my identity that I am a thoroughly biased person. And that was right. and many people do that. They think their biases entitle them to be right, when what they are really being is biased. Hi, Rike. So when we begin to look into how biased we can be, it also sets up a narrative which creates our identity. And our identity is largely determined by our biases. I've come across groups who are biased in this way or the other. You get the people who are vegan and they're biased towards vegan. So if you offer them meat or vegetables, they will choose vegetables. You get other people who are, they love their meat and they eat their meat and they do their meat. And when you offer them vegetables and meat, they will eat meat. But there's a difference between what other people's biases are and what my own biases are. And so one can only own one's own biases. How am I biased? What determines how I look at this world? How do I see this world? How I interact with it? How do I determine what is right or wrong, or what is good for me or not good for me? So I began to examine all the biases that I've had over life, and I saw how my biases actually kind of influenced the choices that I was making. So in a sense, I was becoming predictably self-deterministic. And what that means is that the outcomes of the choices that I was going to make were predictable. And that predictability of those choices were largely self-defeating. There's that old saying, if you do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. So how does one get out of those patterns of behavior and thought and bias, where one can look at the world and say, if I'm in an African hut, I will be African. I will dip into the pot with my hands. I will eat like they do. And I will talk like they do. I will communicate with them as I do. Or will I keep holding on my notion that it's okay to be right when my righteousness is based on bias? You know, these may seem philosophical to many people, but from my perspective, I see it from an energetic perspective, and how I want to go where everything is possible. And I don't want to live a life where I think of things as being impossible, because I know that everything is possible. But I just have to walk the pathway so that I can make the impossible possible. And this may seem a bit esoteric, but you know, that's kind of how my brain sometimes thinks and how I think about things. And does anybody have any comments, or have you ever examined your own biases and seen how that creates the narrative for the identity that you create for yourself?
Yes, Colin.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, thanks.
Okay, I remember many years ago, I'd taken on the bias of my mother without realizing. And she was very much against tattoos. And when my daughter was about 18, she said to me, "Mum, can I have a tattoo or a piercing?" And I said, no. And then when she was 18, I said, "Well, you're an adult, you decide." She didn't say anything more. And then about a few months later, she lifted her arms up, which brought a t-shirt up, and she had a tattoo down below her waist. And I freaked out. And she was crying, and she said, "Mum, it doesn't change who I am inside." And what I learned from that was, I asked myself, where did that bias come from? Because if I saw a man with tattoos, it didn't bother me. I'd taken on what my mother said about women or girls with tattoos. And then I also learned at a conference I went to that anything, sorry, it's my dog, anything we judge, we will attract, breed, or become, which means we'll attract it into our lives. I was condemning tattoos, or we breed it in our children, or we actually do it ourselves. And I also went to a seminar a week later where somebody was covered in tattoos, and he said, "Susan, do you know the history of tattoos?" So long story short, it was saying my bias at that time was a belief system of my mother I'd grown up with and wasn't aware of. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, biases attach to us. And when something attaches to you, it becomes part of your consciousness.
Yeah.
So if you can allow yourself to be unbiased, you know, and as I said before, there's a difference between other people's biases and your own biases. And be aware of your own biases and manage those. Don't try to manage other people's biases, because you can't. Because like you say, you grew up with a bias towards tattoos. Some of these things in life are inbred in us, and we conform to them. So we can only judge and evaluate our own biases and observe when we are being biased in a particular way. But we can't judge the other people's biases, because they are basically a reflection of who you are with their own biases. And we have to allow other people to be who they be. And the only way you can be who you be with other people is to allow them to be who they be. That's the nature of freedom. Freedom is being who you be and allowing other people to be who they be. Without judgment, without correction. The only person you have to ever control in your life or be responsible for is yourself. We can't be responsible for other people. And I don't want to be responsible for others. I love the fact that other people are other people. Because it would be a very boring world if everybody was like me. I couldn't imagine going through a world where everybody thought like me and just acted like me and did what I did, and that would be so boring. So we have to create an appreciation for difference and see that different does not necessarily mean opposite. Now, to look at the way I look at it is, we are all just part of one big diamond, this one big soul. But each of that big diamond has many facets, and we are just one of those facets of that one big diamond. And what we perceive as other people are different facets of the same diamond. So if one can appreciate that one is that diamond and that we are all different facets of the same diamond, then it's cool. People can do what the hell they like. I can do what the hell I like. Because freedom means being free from bias.
And I guess it comes into when people being who they are affects your life. So that's, it's one thing to say, you do what you do and I do what I do, but sometimes what other people do often impacts facets of your own. So, how do you reconcile that?
Well, one has to be assertive and protect one's own sovereignty. Because when you give another a right to be sovereign, what you are giving them is your right to express their sovereignty. So when you have the right to be sovereign and you give other people the right to be sovereign, then you say, okay, you have the right to be sovereign and do whatever you like, but it mustn't it mustn't cause me harm, mustn't cause me loss, and it must not impede my freedom. And those are the kind of, all universal law is based on those three principles. Cause no loss, do no harm, and do not impede the freedoms of others. So if others come along and what they do is going to cause you loss, harm, or impede your freedom, now, different separate laws, they're not one law. There's a difference between causing a loss, causing harm, or impeding freedom. And when you feel your freedoms are being infringed, that's where you draw the line. You say, I'm not going to do that. Sorry. I've given you sovereignty and sovereign right to express yourself, but you may not cause me harm, loss, or impede my freedoms. So we have to be assertive in this. It's not just that everybody can do whatever they like. And we have to protect our sovereignty, and we have to protect our right to be who we be, and what we consider to be harm, loss, or having our freedoms impeded. But often some people, there's a difference between perceived loss and real loss. A person might come and say, well, take, for instance, you go to the dentist, he's going to pull a tooth that's aching, and he pulls a tooth. He's causing you harm, he's causing you loss. Do you want to tell him, no, don't cause me harm or loss? You know, those are the choices we have to make. Do I want to live with this tooth that's causing me pain, or do I want it out? So I go to the dentist and ask him to pull my tooth. So what I've done, I've given him the freedom to cause me pain, to cause me loss, you know, and so one has to understand the difference between real loss and perceived loss, you know. So sometimes it's okay to lose things. But when someone really comes and wants to harm you directly, that's when you have to protect yourself. So that's where I draw the line. Sorry, you ain't going to do that. And I learned this a long time ago when I was 2006, when I first set out on this journey where I made a commitment to go on this journey. And I don't know how it came about, but it just kind of an idea that sprang into my mind, and I had learned a lot about it. So I decided, okay, the way to do it is to set a flagpole, a standard. You know, this is my standard. And I said to my friends, sorry, but I'm changing. You might not like who I am becoming, but this is the way things are. My standard is now, and my mantra in life is, anything less than love is not acceptable to me. And they kind of looked at me like, huh? What the hell are you talking about? And I said, well, I'm sorry, but that's the standard in life that I'm going to adopt. Anything less than love is not acceptable to me. So when you come and, gossip to me, or going to tell me lies, or, made up stories, or, express your anger at someone else, or I'm not available for that anymore. Sorry, you can do that because you can do that anyway. But if I'm in your company, then I'm going to walk away because that's not my standard. And so we have to be assertive, as people talk about being a soul warrior, when you're a soul warrior, you don't only learn how to attack from a soul perspective, but you learn how to defend. And we have to really defend, and not only ourselves. Like I feel deeply the responsibility to defend you because you're on my team. If anybody attacks you, they're attacking me. So, we have to learn this oneness of that we're all on the same side. We're all the same thing. We're all the same diamond with different facets. And I find it highly offensive when I see people on the internet attacking each other. They're on the same team. Why the hell are they attacking each other? They're crazy. They've just lost their sense of perspective, of who and what we are. And we are far more powerful than we imagine ourselves to be. We are great creator beings. And we have to just learn how to change, to be that, and to change the world we live in, Because the world we live in is a hologram, and the hologram's been controlled by other people outside of us. You look at people's biases. Where do those biases come from? They've been indoctrinated into them. This political view is right, that political view is wrong, this language is right, this language is wrong, this culture is right, this culture is wrong, this religion is right, that religion is wrong, this act is, moral, this act is immoral. And so we get all these morals and ethics, and so people get totally confused about who they are. And they're all looking outward at what's happening outside of them, but they don't protect and manage and take responsibility for what's inside of them. The only territory we have to protect is ourselves. We don't have to protect anybody else. Because when we protect ourselves, we protect each other. Because when we protect ourselves, we're protecting valuable real estate that is part of the tapestry of the oneness that we all represent, of that one diamond. So we have to change the consciousness of this planet in a really big way. And it starts with us changing our consciousness. And trying to rid ourselves of the biases that we have. It really kind of offends me. I don't mind people who are vegan or want to eat meat and carnivorous, and I don't mind. That's their choice. But I really don't like it when others try to judge me because I'm not like that. So I like to shock people sometimes. I'll go out with vegans and order a steak. But you're a vegan. I said, no, I'm not a vegan. I'm anything I want to be in this moment in time. I don't have to be like you. I don't have to be like anybody else. I can just be who I am. And I can just exercise my free will choice in this moment in time. So this whole narrative that we keep talking to ourselves, this is the way I am, is filled with bias. And to rid ourselves of the bias, sometimes we have to do the thing that we perceive to be wrong. I don't mean like jumping off a building or something stupid like that. But sometimes it's just exercising our free will choices in ways that are not predetermined by our biases. So we don't always have to be squeezed into a particular mold of being, and we can actually choose to go outside of that. And I'm not saying that our biases are right or wrong. I'm just saying they're biases. And what makes them right or wrong? Nothing. They're just choices. But at least if you retain your free will to make those choices, you can actually stop being prejudiced and biased. So you can do the opposite of what you're telling yourself to do. You can exercise that free will. And just for the fun of it, I can be different if I want. That's what kids do. They go out and they will go out and get that tattoo. Why? Because it makes mom angry. I know my mom's going to get upset by this, but I'm going to do it anyway. But we sometimes don't realize how we are so squeezed into a mold of conformity, and how those biases from our past determine our choices. And if we want to be able to make choices that are self-fulfilling and open up new possibilities for us, we have to have an attitude of being unbiased. I don't know if it makes any sense to you folks. I sound like I'm preaching. I see Ryan smiling. Yeah, just, as I said, I was thinking about this today, so this is what I'm bringing to this meeting, and I just wondered if anybody has comments, because quite frankly, I was shocked today when I began to realize how biased I am about certain things, and how many of my choices every day are based on those biases.
Well, Colin,
Since I've been-
sorry if I cut anybody off. So does the bias not come from a belief? Is that the whole package, like about tattoos? If that comes from my mother, isn't that a belief? Which then becomes, or, it's like, how does judgment, bias, and belief it's almost the same thing, is it not?
Yeah. Well, what we do, we create stereotypes. And we not only stereotype people outside of us, we stereotype ourselves. And that's, in a sense, how we create this external identity. But we are not that external identity. We are far more powerful than that. We are eternal, sovereign soul beings connected to the universe. And we ought to be able to have a universal way of thinking and being, separate from the stereotypes that we appear to be here on this planet. Because of my experiences with higher dimensional beings, I know that anything is possible. They can travel through space and time and go back in time and be in two different places at the same time. And, we are so programmed into narrowing our range of possibilities here. And a lot of that stems just from the simple idea that we are biased, and that our biases often determine the choices we make. So when the choices we are making are programmed into us through our bias, we've lost our ability to have free will. And when we lose our ability to have free will, we are no longer free. We are prisoners and slaves to a system that we didn't design, but was designed for us. And that's what we have to learn to do, is to get out of the prison of conformity and learn to think beyond what we've been taught is possible. And see that the impossible is possible if we would allow ourselves to go there. And we've seen, in my lifetime, I've seen many new inventions come on, into the marketplace. And I mean, I remember when the first fax machine came into the market, like people were amazed that, you could send this piece of paper, put it into a machine and it would go somewhere else. And at the time, everyone thought that this was revolutionary science. And we had cell phones, and now we got the internet and Wi-Fi and all this stuff coming out. So we are beginning to get to the point where we're beginning to realize that, hey, anything is possible. We've learning about, Corey Good talks about spaceships, and the Germans were the first to produce a flying saucer. They did that in Victor Schauberger in 1943. But it's just information that's been hidden from us. But it's common knowledge now that spaceships were invented a long time ago. They were, they existed, and it's just all this information's been hidden from us. And the reason it's been hidden from us is to control us, to control our minds and our emotions, to condition us. Because what they're afraid of, when I say they, the people who control this planet, what they're afraid of is that we're going to wake up and realize, hey, we've been told a lot of bullshit all our lives. Everything we've been told is a lie. Our history is a lie. Our science is a lie. Our mathematics is a lie. Our languages are a lie. Our prejudices are a lie. Our health institutions are a lie. Everything is a lie. And they don't want us to wake up to this notion that we are eternal soul beings connected to everything else in the universe and connected to each other. They don't want us to understand how the mechanics of creation work, how waves of energy, waves of light and sound spark and then create quanta, and quanta create morphogenetic fields, and morphogenetic fields create atoms, and atoms create molecules, and molecules create cells. And these cells are the cells in our body. We've got 7 trillion cells in the body. And each one of those cells is producing 1.4 volts of electricity. So we have this enormous amount of electricity going through our body all the time. And that's what energizes us. That's the soul. The soul is energy. And it has identity. And when we can free ourselves from that identity of the limited self to the unlimited self, where anything is possible, that's when we really free ourselves, free ourselves as well as our souls. When the soul is free, the self is free. And if we can get away from and maybe you should do what I did today. I actually looked at my biases. I take this stuff quite seriously. Like I did that exercise with emotions and say, okay, what are emotions and how do they form them? How do they influence the way I think and feel it? What are these emotions? So I did a long list of these emotions and I created a spreadsheet, and then I did an analysis of this thing called emotions. And I realized that I was totally incompetent emotionally. And so today I spent the day looking at my biases and how biased I am about certain things. And then I thought, oh my goodness, my biases are actually influencing my decisions. So where's my free will? doesn't exist because my decisions are based on the biases that I have. And this was like a real kind of light up bulb moment for me. I thought, hey, maybe I should stop being so biased and say, why do I choose meat over vegetables? Why don't I just say, well, anything's okay, Why eat meat or vegetables? Why don't I just eat pudding? So, so we have this thing called free will. And the more we exercise it, the more free we become. When we can exercise our free will, not determined by bias. So really, and that in a sense becoming more instinctive and intuitive as a being, and not allowing the pressure of conformity to influence who we are. Then we can actually blow out, go outside and see what's really out there, in the universe. And possibly allow us to, have different experiences. Oh, I've also been thinking about dreams because, most of my experiences with my higher selves were in dream state. Only once or twice I was actually confronted by higher dimensional beings in physical state. And it was very intimidating because they were, 10 to 12 feet tall, as high as the ceiling. So they chose to come in my dream state rather than make me feel intimidated by their physical presence. But just that experience of dreaming and dreams made me begin to think, well, aren't we perhaps dreaming inside a dream, which is also inside a dream, which is also inside a dream. So I don't know if you remember those Russian dolls. You get the one doll and you put them, and they all fit into each other nicely. You get this big doll and it becomes this little doll. And that, in a sense, is.
You have to simplify.
Well, yeah, it's how everything is a fractal version of the whole, And the universe, if you know the energy of the universe, is like a torus. It goes in and out and around. It's a donut-shaped energy space, and it goes in and out. And the waves of energy, the electrons go around the spiral, and then the magnetic fields support and the electrons going around the spiral, and this creates gravity. And so gravity is not an amazing science we seem to understand. If you just understand the toroid and how it works, there it is. But it's interesting to me that when I started looking into the nature of the toroid, I found that most people were talking about how the electrons spiral around this kind of energy field. But I didn't see a single person, or I couldn't find a single space, or a depiction, or people have gifts of toroids. But now it's talking about the magnetic fields that circulate in and out around the toroid. I found that very interesting because it's a basic principle of science where you have electricity, you have magnetism. The two go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. And this principle of and if you look at the Earth, what creates the gravitational fields is the Earth is like a toroid. And gravity is created by the way the magnetism works, the magnetosphere around the Earth works. Yeah, it's all interesting. Sorry, I've got this rather obtuse mind today because I've been rather challenged by this notion of free will. Anybody had any issues or anything they'd like to chat about or discuss tonight? Be happy to chat about that.
Yeah, I had when I was about 1991, I think it was. I just lost my wife about 6 months earlier, and I went upstairs one morning, just a normal morning, up into the bedroom, and as I walked in the door, there I was faced, or sort of, on either side of the room. I had 6-foot pillars of light, like it was a bit like a Christmassy light, all dripping and sparkling. And one said on one side, "Simplify simply," and on the other side it said "Trust the process." And that's sort of lived with me all these years now, and that's how I like to live my life, because it's obviously something beautiful that was given at that particular time, and I couldn't remember anything, how long it lasted or anything, but it was there a good while. But and I have got a 5-minute memory anyway, so it's I'm lucky to be able to remember that, I suppose. So.
You just surprised yourself.
yes. It's.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Ryan. Because in a sense, I got the same information from my higher selves. Keep things simple, don't, because in the beginning, I was getting this information and it was blowing my mind to the extent that I thought I was going mad. I thought I was going insane because what I was being told contradicted so much with what I would, or conflicted so much with what I'd been brought up with, and taught and indoctrinated to think that. And then my higher self, kind of rescued me from this and said, "Keep it simple, stupid." Yes, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
And that's the way to go. Just always keep it simple. And then the other thing that you talked about was trust the process.
Yeah.
And it is just a process. And one has to have trust in that process. Because I had a total makeover of who I was at the time. And I'm glad I experienced that, because I could not have the range of possibilities open to me that I now have had I not trusted the process. And the process can be painful sometimes, it can be confusing sometimes, but learning oneself, is very important, because whatever you are giving that energy into the earth. So it's a symbiotic relationship that we have. The earth is raising its frequency that's coming up into us. We're pushing the frequency that we are feeding, we're pushing that down into the earth. And so we're creating this energy around us, that comes in from, comes up from the earth, and we push it down. And we're connecting with the universe, and the universe is connecting with the earth. So we have these many, many energy fields around us. And we are just part of that, and if you can see ourselves as just being one with each other, I'm doing I'm going to be part of Kerry K. Samadhi's symposium. And she asked me what I'd like to speak about. And I said, well, thing I'd really like to speak about is oneness and the mechanics of oneness and how it works. So,
Simple.
yeah, it's the things that you don't see that are important, not the things that you see. Like your feelings, thoughts. You don't see your feelings and you don't see your thoughts. But the things you don't see are important. You can't see the energy that's coming between us. You can't see the way it's coming from your Wi-Fi to your cell phone or your laptop or whatever device you're using. You can't see that energy, but that energy is being manifest to you. So sometimes the manifestation of something proves that the technology is there. And if we just look at nature, how nature works, there's the most advanced technology you can imagine.
It's all you need, really, yeah. It's,
Yeah. I mean, who could invent a system like that?
You did.
Yeah, we did. We did it together.
Yeah.
But
what a joy to look out the window and see it.
Yeah. And we just can't see the things that we see. Like we look at nature, we don't recognize that there is a miracle happening right here in front of our eyes. These plants are drawing energy from the soil and it's going up their stems and it's creating leaves and flowers and then fruit. Isn't this crazy? This is amazing technology. And yet we pass it by every day and we don't recognize it.
No.
Yeah.
Go to the supermarket. It's all in the bag.
Yeah. Well, it's been wonderful spending time with you folks. I'm going to end it here because I need to go to the bathroom. But be assured that I love you all, love this time with you guys because it just gives me a platform where I can just speak and tell you stuff. Next week I might tell you a different story, and last week I told you a different story, but well, not. I talked about different topics and so on. So this is my platform where I will allow you to speak whatever you wish to speak about, and you can listen to me ramble on.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Colin.
Bye, everyone.
Great to be with you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.